Each of us has two lives, the life we live and the unlived life that is within us, and in between the two stands resistance. We're all creative and brilliant individuals capable of producing something great, but very few of us do, because resistance holds us back. Resistance is like the Terminator that is programmed to kill the spirit of potential and is the source of self-doubt. It's a malevolent force that convinces you that your ideas won't work or that nothing can change, so why bother? If you allow resistance to bully you and push you around, you'll wind up bitter, angry, and unfulfilled. Why can't you do the work you know you want to do? Why does it feel so difficult to get into a consistent training routine or target specific areas of your life that you know you want to improve? I'm all too familiar with identifying something you know is going to massively improve your life, but then being faced with what feels like overwhelming difficulty in taking those daily actions to make it happen. The War of Art is possibly my favourite book by the author Steven Pressfield, which explores the creative process and particularly the internal forces that prevent individuals from reaching their full potential, which he calls resistance with a capital R. In this video, I'm going to define what resistance is and address some of the many forms of how it shows up in your life and how to recognise them, and then I'm going to talk about solutions so that you can finally start to tackle this force and slay the dragon of resistance for good. Resistance with a capital R is an invisible negative force that is the primary obstacle to achieving personal and creative growth, and it affects all individuals regardless of their skill level, talent, or success. It's that feeling of negativity that seems to emanate from the blank page when you sit down to write something, or that feeling of dread about an awkward conversation that you know you can't avoid having. Resistance shows up in a multitude of different forms like self-doubt, procrastination, getting distracted, feeling tired, addictions, and many, many more. It always shows up whenever you wish to undertake something that will positively improve your life and occurs in direct proportion to the potential gain you have from taking those actions. So the more you have to gain from doing that thing, like finishing the creative project, getting into a good training routine, then the more resistance you're going to be faced with when attempting to act on those desires. And resistance only shows up when you attempt to move to a higher plane of existence, and is nowhere to be seen when you regress to your lower nature. Pressfield calls the force diabolical, which means of the devil, which sounds quite extreme, but that's exactly what it is, because if left unexamined, resistance will literally take everything from you and leave your dreams in shambles. Pressfield talks about how he was a writer for most of his life, but was so undermined by resistance that it wasn't until he was in his 50s before he had any success. I believe when you're quite an introspective person, you're generally more susceptible to the forces of resistance, and it can even take the form of things like physical unease and discomfort in the body, which is something I've personally experienced. So now you should have a clear idea of just what resistance is and accepted that it's never going to go away. What do we actually do about it? Well, it requires a shift in your identity, one from that of an amateur to the disciplined approach of a professional. An amateur is a weekend warrior who does it when they feel like it. A professional does it regardless of how they feel. A professional shows up every morning no matter what. They stay on the job until it's completed. They don't over-identify with the work they're doing, so if there's a failure, it doesn't destroy their confidence and they don't take it personally. A professional is patient and they endure adversity. What's really important to remember here is that it's not the quality of work that's produced that matters, and you must disconnect from the outcome, because obsession with outcome can just be resistance re-entering through the back door to fool you once again. It's the fact that you just showed up. It doesn't matter if that gym session was utter garbage. The fact that you just showed up at all is the real win. What I've always found quite fascinating about this is that it's not that we don't have the physical capacity to do the work, which resistance would like to lead us to believe, because the majority of people have a job that they show up to every single day at the same time, so why can't we do that for our own dreams? When I first heard about this concept of turning pro, I used to think that it wouldn't make a difference and that it was too simple, but there's something sort of official about when you make that decision to show up no matter what. It becomes like an agreement that you set with yourself, and then that structure makes it so that you'll begin to feel uncomfortable or like you're betraying yourself if you begin to break it and procrastinate. In the example of a workout, this could be that you just go to the gym for 20 minutes or even less. Don't discount the power of starting small and building up your power over time. I'm personally quite an impatient person, and when I heard things like this, I'd immediately think about how long it would take to see progression at such a small level of effort and think that it always had to be more and to go harder. but I had to realise that this had never actually produced any satisfactory results for me over time. When we sit down to write each day and do our work, power concentrates around us. We become like a magnetised rod that attracts iron filings. Ideas come, insights accrete. I believe what stops most people in their tracks is that the negativity that resistance can produce feels so torturous that we can't bear the prospect of it any longer. But the thing is that if you do manage to overcome that initial barrier and win in a small way, the feeling of resistance will diminish significantly and you start to feel better about the work and get some good ideas. But most people just never manage to stick it out long enough for this to occur. It's like the old 3 feet from gold analogy. Pressfield likes to use mythological language in the book and calls this being blessed by the muse. He says that one has to pay their dues and show up before they will receive any blessings. And you might be quite surprised to know that every single time I come to making one of these videos, I battle quite extensively with the forces of resistance. There always seems to be something better to do, and I go through a lot of self-doubt and the process just generally feels difficult and tiresome, but I do it anyway. And without fail, despite overcoming it numerous times, I still have to remain very centred and aware of what's happening so that I don't get dragged into it. So much so that I have above my desk the words "overcome resistance" as a daily reminder to myself. And this is the thing with resistance. The reason it's so powerful and convincing is because it uses all of your fears and insecurities against you. It knows how to push all of your buttons. Resistance also has to ensure that you don't look it in the face and see it for what it is, and so it always hides and uses deception. And if you don't face it, you end up thinking there's something wrong with you. And I think this is what entraps so many people today. When you do manage to win the battle over resistance, remember and celebrate that time. The more you do it, the more awareness you develop as to when it rears its head. The definition of insanity is repeating the same thing again and again, but expecting a different result. How many times are you going to repeat the same cycle of actions before you just have to take the hit and realise it's not working and try something else? One thing that helped me a lot here was taking a much wider view of the situation and recognising that yes, doing just a small amount of positive action will be slow going initially, but what resistance doesn't want you to realise is that you become stronger and more mentally conditioned the more you do this process like progressive overload. So in a very short space of time you're able to handle more and more, and before you know it you're well on the way to becoming that person you want to be. Think of the alternative and be honest with yourself. Over time, has the current way of operating gotten you significantly closer to where you want to be? And if it hasn't, then what have you got to lose in changing your approach? Consider turning pro and accept the fact that this is never going to go away and will be a constant force for you to battle with in your life. And accept the challenge, not wishing for things to be easier, but instead for the strength to endure greater hardship.